Today on the Idiot's Guide, we're talking about from a soft whisper, someone playing with your hair, a genuine but still kind of creepy, intense stare directly at you, or simply watching two colors of paint blend together. The land of ASMR is a wonderful world of simultaneous comfort and discomfort. It all comes down to preferences. And our today-old life hack is, if you're unsure what to get that special someone for their special day, we've got just the right hack to guarantee they'll love whatever you get them. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Prophet Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Welcome back to the Idiot's Guide, where we are two idiots who are just as unqualified as anyone else, but still try to talk about all the stuff. Before I dive into our topic for today, I'd like to let you guys know we are a community here. Part of that community is welcoming new people. If you're new here and you're enjoying this odd episode, hit that subscribe button, like us, give us a comment, tell us how you feel right now. Are you relaxed? Are you a little sleepy? That's okay. It's kind of on purpose. As we go through this today, I really think that I'm very uncomfortable with trying to maintain this demeanor that is not a whisper. It's not a talking, not anything loud. Still have the same energy that I would need for a podcast recording. And it's legitimately challenging.
We are both very boisterous individuals. And so to have to tone that down in order to be in the ASMR world for vocal volume is definitely a challenge for both of us.
I never really thought that ASMR had a purpose, I guess, or that it was really as popular as it was. But even my kids, when I mentioned the fact that we were going to do an episode on this, they were really interested in what, like, the fact that I was doing this. It's something fascinating that's out there. There's lots of crazy things, lots of videos. Probably one of the highest trending videos that it's been that way for years. But why? Why is it so, like, this odd practice of listening to someone breathe between words, talk subtly or with a cadence, and somehow it's supposed to relax you to hopefully sleep? To me, if I'm being honest, I really think that it's just a bunch of items that we've decided to listen to. And I mean, like, I think about, there's a practice in, I can't remember, like Thailand. They have videos of them, like, slurping noodles. And it's a thing. And that's part of this. So I have some props today to kind of carry on as we do this. Something as simple as just rubbing the microphone.
Fortunately, I can't hear that, so it's not bothering me. But every other sound that you have done bothers me. Even talking quietly is bothering me. Like, I know with ASMR, the idea is that you get the tingle, you get the response in the base of your skull that goes down your spine and all this, and it's supposed to feel good and all of that. I have the opposite response. It is horrible. Hopefully, Adam will throw in the image of, don't do it again, of me cringing when he was doing the slurping at the open of the episode. That's my response when I hear ASMR.
I'm going to make that one the thumbnail cover.
Oh, great. It is, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I just have the opposite effect of what most people have. So one of the reasons we decided to talk about this, or one of the things that you brought up, was I am autistic. And, you wanted to be sensitive to my reactions,
Of course.
to certain things. And there's really been no studies done on, whether people who are autistic or whether it's have a sensitivity to it, whether it's just certain people have a sensitivity to it and it has nothing to do with autism at all. Whether there's a difference between neurotypical and neuroatypical brains in their response. I'm talking way too fast for ASMR. I'll try to
It's okay.
calm myself
We
down.
still have a timer where we have to get through this stuff. So, although it is about ASMR, we don't do ASMR ever. So, if we don't have a cadence that's soft and soothing, tough.
Now, I do teach a form of meditation. It relies on science, it relies on the neurological pathways of the brain. And there are strong evidences that a specific tone, a specific cadence, we see this in religious leaders when they speak a certain way. They actually used to teach, I think in some seminaries they still do, teach a specific vocal pattern in order to draw people in. And so when I work with people with meditation, I use a very specific tone. I keep my voice, modulated, as opposed to like here on the podcast. Sometimes I'm very upbeat. Other times I'm much more melodic. Whether I'm thinking or whether I'm trying to prove a point or anything like that changes my vocal tonation. And so trying to be ASMR is extremely difficult. And again, even talking this softly or hearing you talk this softly is very aggravating. I did not think it was going to be, but it is.
While I talk about this real quick, I'm going to go ahead and run this comb through my beard. So, first and foremost, I got an article from Healthline by the writer is Lauren Sharkey, which is a really cool last name, I thought. Wrote this back in 2019. There's 28 ASMR triggers for anxiety relief, stress, sleep, and more. And really, honestly, there's not a lot of fanciness about this other than exactly what I'm doing here, randomly running a comb through my beard and capturing the sound and the visual of this happening. Now, that's doing two different methods of ASMR, one in which you can hear the brush going through the hair. That's supposed to be soothing. And at the same time, somebody visually watching that. Now, I don't think I look like a very comfortable person. This probably looks creepier than anything else. But the idea is that both of those are supposed to be at tempo, calm, relaxed, and soothing to relieve that anxiety that you may have built up inside of you. There's lots of different ways to do this. This one has 28 most common, but it doesn't. It's not definitive. This isn't a whole list of it. Probably one of the biggest things that you can tell is whispering. Whispering is indicative of a relaxed environment. Even when you go get a massage, they're not going to be like, hey, so-and-so, are you done with your massage yet? Are you good? Do you feel great? No, they're going to be calm and relaxed and say, is it okay if I do this? I'm going to put whatever on my hands and give you a massage, whatever. It's communicated in a gentle, soft whisper in that environment. I know you don't get massages, so...
No, I don't.
You're like, this is fascinating information.
Well, the few times that I have had massages, it's never been a whisper. It's that same meditation volume and tone that I was talking about earlier that generally I see with that. I've had 2 massages in my life, so, not a great data set, but that's what I've experienced.
Another tone is tapping or scratching. This is my ASMR cup. For those watching, you can hear the ice making a beautiful rattling sound inside of it. It's a wonderful noise. Joe's face is just horrified right now. I did mention comfort or discomfort.
Yes, you did.
But one of the things, I watched a video on this, and there was a gal. She had a plastic like pool noodle that she had queued up between 2 microphones. Oh. And she was just tapping on the pool noodle. There was nothing else, not rubbing, like no squeaking sounds. It was just tap, 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 tap. And I feel like this that's a lot better sound to take than the tapping on a pool noodle through stereo effects. And the worst part about it is like, when I listened to her, the part I didn't like the most was she was like, now if you guys can gather, that was heavy nasal breathing. It was more distracting than anything else that I was watching or listening to. So there's no way I'm going to get relaxed by listening to nasal breather tap on some plastic. It was driving me nuts. And I lasted about 30 seconds in there and I was like, I'm out, I'm done. This is stupid. But people love it. She had like 500 and something thousand views.
Some people may think I am faking my responses. These are real responses that I am having. This is... Oh, and it's taking me a little bit to recover every time you do one of them. Not the mouth noises.
Oh man, I got a banana. Joe, this is going to be difficult for you, I know.
I am really trying to stay in here.
Let's talk about some of the science behind this.
All right.
I'll give you the reins for a little bit.
So, as of right now, there's not a lot of definitive science on what's happening.
What does ASMR stand for? I asked my kids, they have no idea. Most people don't know.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, it is autonomous sensory meridian response.
What does that mean?
That means that you are getting so autonomous means you don't have control over it. It's just automatic. Sensory, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's the senses. So it's an automatic sensory response.
So a lot of them, they talk about like the tingle in your spine, right, to back down your spine. I've heard that the nickname tingle brains or tingle heads. Okay, great, that's funny. But I've also heard them equated as a braingasm. I've heard that.
Yes.
So,
and that's where a lot of the science revolves around is this an actual thing? Is this actually happening? Is it just psychosomatic? So a lot of people talk about MSG. So MSG for a long time was said to cause a whole slew of conditions. Well, they have since proven that wrong. There's no sensitivity to MSG. There's no physiological problem with it. But there is some psychosomatic, because you believe it, then it does happen.
That's why, like my generation, when we go get Chinese food, I feel bad.
Right. It's all psychosomatic. It's the placebo effect.
And it's not necessarily that I feel bad, like ill. Sometimes depends on where I eat the Chinese food, but I feel bad because I'm like convicted that I'm eating so much MSG.
Right. Yeah, and MSG is just salt.
Yeah.
A form of salt. But it's this idea that we have created this idea in our brains that we have to feel sick after something, and therefore we do. And it's not that you're faking sick, you legitimately are sick.
Yeah.
It's the placebo effect, it's psychosomatic. And so they're studying, is this a psychosomatic effect? Is this a real thing that's occurring? And so there have actually been a couple of good studies. They haven't done any very large, fully in-depth studies on it yet, but they're getting there. And unfortunately, there's no concrete answer as to why we do what we do when it comes to ASMR, why it's reacting the way that it does. One neurologist, so there was an article on Vox, a website, and I can't remember the name of the blog.
It's not Fox, like the news.
Yeah,
no.
VOX.
VOX.
And they were referencing a blog article from a neurologist who was answering questions on ASMR. This was back in 2012. And he was saying there's a lot of different things that it could be from. And now some of the research does point, some of the new research does point to the directions that he was referencing could be the cause. So one of those is that we are conditioned to have a response to certain stimuli. So when we see a red light, we immediately stop.
Okay.
That's something that's been trained in us. And so we have trained ourselves that with certain things, we act a certain way. When we put our hand toward a hot stove, when our hand starts to feel the heat, which is a sensory response, we pull our hand back immediately. That is an automatic sensory response. The exact same thing. And so he had a couple other thoughts in there, but that's the one that seems to relate mostly with the more modern. Again, he was answering that in 2012, before really any of these studies were done. The first real comprehensive study was done in 2015, and that started a lot of the other studies. So a lot of the other studies will then reference this one from 2015 as the starting point for the studies into this. And so his conclusions were long before any of these studies were being done. And so I reference that just because it seems to be that's where it's coming from. So the 2015 study is called Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, a flow-like mental state. Now, this one had the largest number of participants, also a good split between male, female, and non-binary.
Okay.
And the couple of the problems with it was a self-reporting study, and it was us, the participants were regular consumers of ASMR. And so what they found is that ASMR can be induced in those who are susceptible. So they found that there are some people who are susceptible and others who are not, which again goes back to this maybe a biological function that is then part of the triggering response. And so some people don't develop those triggers, some people do. It also could be environmental. But and those who are susceptible by a fairly consistent set of triggers. So it does seem that there's a pattern to it. Now, again, this was done on regular consumers of ASMR, which kind of removes some of that biological function. These could be trained, developed traits. And so someone who consumes it finds out they like it, and then they continue to consume it.
They pursue, yeah.
So, and that also goes into a 2023 study. So this is the most recent study that I could find.
Okay.
So this was last year, and this was done in Japan.
Was there noodles involved? Slurping?
No. Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly what was involved.
That's an ASMR one. Slurping. Yeah, of course.
It's a triggering response. Your noodles in Japan are synonymous. Exactly. It's a biased. Anyway. But the 2023 study is called Brain Function Effects of ASMR Video Viewing. Now, the problems with this study, it was a small quantity of participants, only 30, but it was evenly split, male and female, but there was also no control group, so they were only studying ASMR videos. They weren't studying ASMR videos versus, say, normally relaxing videos to see if there were similar or different responses. Now with this one, they did actual fMRIs, so those are functional MRIs, where they're watching the brain function as they're showing these videos. And so we're seeing what areas of the brain are actually being triggered as part of listening to ASMR. And what they found is there's a difference. There's actually a different segment of the brain that is triggered when it is a auditory only versus an auditory and visual. And so those of you listening to the podcast on a streaming service for podcasts only are going to have a different triggering response in the brain, the biological side of it, versus those that are watching on YouTube. And so there are going to be two different segments of the brain that are being triggered as part of this, which is really interesting. Now, they're related portions of the brain, but they are different.
I'm curious if, like, you and I have had a conversation about this in the past where smells can be a really big trigger for certain things. And because this is part of what you're doing with this is stimulating in order to trigger somebody into a certain state of mind. Now, a smell can be positive or negative. A good example of that is earlier today I went on a walk. It's rainy outside, and I went through an area that was, full of cottonwood trees, and it smelled amazing. And but that smell, like fresh rain smell, like down through an area with grass and things like that, reminded me of walking along the river at my grandparents' house, in along the Boise River. But then you have, on the flip side of that, you have, if I smell burning trash or a burn pit of some sort, I don't think about my grandparents. I think about a combat zone, and I physically feel that at that point. So one just kind of takes me down memory lane. I kind of run through a catalog of pictures. The other one can send me spiraling out of control. But I don't think, like, this one, what's interesting is it's more audible and visible. It isn't even actually the idea of touch, because you're just watching it. It's an observation, or you're hearing the comb go through like the hair or something like that, something rubbing a microphone. You can hear those sounds. So you're really not looking at, I feel like, the entirety of what ASMR can be.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they're finding, is that ASMR, these sounds, these triggers, these visuals, are actually triggering specific portions of the brain to cause a reaction. Now, the areas that they're triggering are really specific and really important. And it seems to tie back to that same idea of what we think of as traumatic triggers.
Yeah.
And so it that's why it's hard to say whether this is a biological function or the idea of nature versus nurture. Nature being biological, nurture being the environment around us as defining what we like or what we don't like or what we run from or what we run to. And so it's just a really interesting. The science is still early, very early on ASMR, but a lot of the conclusions from a lot of the studies are we need to study this more because there seems to be something behind this. And it could be, in my viewpoint, it is related to the same idea of those triggers in that we've learned to value something or see something, and that creates a dopamine-like effect in our bodies that we like that. Now, what I talked about meditation of a form that I do with people, and this is what that is I have them find an object that has absolutely no meaning, and then I attach to that object through certain practices a reaction.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that they now associate that object with that reaction. Generally, it's just getting them into that calm, lower heart rate state. And so anytime they think about that object, they immediately go there. And so that could be what's happening with ASMR and people who use it to fall asleep, is that they've trained themselves that whenever they watch ASMR, they will go to sleep. I've trained myself to do that with the TV show Futurama. I know it sounds really weird.
The voices on that show, I would pull my hair. Like, I don't have any. I shave my head, so
I cannot watch the TV show Futurama anymore, unless I'm trying to
fall asleep.
No, I do, and I have actually trained myself so that when I'm ready to go to sleep, because I'm an insomniac, my brain does not shut off ever. I could be constantly awake, thinking of new things, new ideas, new whatever. But I've trained myself that when I watch a TV show of Futurama, I am literally asleep in 5 minutes. I have been on the same episode of Futurama for about 2 weeks now.
Wow.
Because I instantly go to sleep as soon as I put that on, put my head down. I get 2 minutes into it, I'm done. Some nights it doesn't work as well, but it's a training. I have trained my brain to respond to Futurama that way. I know it sounds really, really weird, but this is potentially similar to what's happening with ASMR. And so it can work with anything. It's just with ASMR, it's quiet.
Yeah.
It's not Futurama.
The kind of delivery is gentle or soft.
Right.
And so, just like you're listening to a loudmouth robot to put yourself to sleep, and I get why, because if you're an insomniac and your brain is going constantly, that stimulation kind of neutralizes that constancy. Constancy, that's not a word. But while I'm talking, I'm going to kind of keep going with this. I think one of the things that, I don't know, I think kind of going to those senses is really a big part of it. Is, as I'm doing this, if for those who aren't watching the video but are just listening to the podcast, I'm currently opening a box of Ritz crackers in order to access the crunchy deliciousness inside. It's so interesting how heightened your senses are to the sounds when you eliminate the normal volume of things.
In normal everyday life, these sounds don't necessarily bother me.
It just happens to be right now.
But because we're specific,
I'm almost done.
because we're specifically being quiet, these sounds are heightened in our processing, in the processing of our brain. So how it's processing everything around us is heightened. And so, again, in normal in normal situations, these aren't as bad. But because they're really the only external stimulus coming in to my brain, this is just massively frustrating. So think about it again. And this is, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting this negative response because I'm autistic. I would love to see some studies on ASMR and autism. But people who are autistic, they go to, say, a park. There is no filter in the brain of an autistic person to stop the processing of extraneous sounds. A neurotypical brain will automatically filter everything out. So it's only processing the most pertinent data. Whereas for someone that is autistic, there is no filter. Everything is coming in and everything is being processed. And so here with this ASMR, every little tiny crackle of that chip, everything that is just
Simplified.
a massive input of just information to process. It seems like it should be less, but it's not.
So if I think about descriptives, like I think if I were to take my fingernails and scratch concrete, it makes your spine tickle, right? Or a chalkboard, nails on a chalkboard. They're like, oh man, I hate the sound. My son doesn't like the sound of cotton rubbing. It's not even picking up on the microphone. So, if I think that sound, that tear of cotton, and just seeing it, he hates it. He can't stand it. He sees, if he sees it, he's like running away, gagging. Then, I was telling you this earlier. My older son likes to pester my other son with this. He'll get a straw. You can get a straw from McDonald's or whatever it is, wherever you're at. We're not sponsored by McDonald's, but we'd like to be.
I did once say that their fries were relatively healthy. I've got the evidence for it.
But he would take it and take the straw out of the paper wrapper, but instead of just wadding up the wrapper and throwing it in, he wouldn't even wad it up. He just kind of like chunk it into big chunks and then feed it into his mouth and chew it. So it gets like wads up in his mouth. And just the action of chewing up paper was just like...
it honestly makes me want to throw up.
Right. So this ASMR thing, I think the thing that they're missing out on is just this concept of, I'm almost done, Joe, don't worry. This one's not as bad because it's really quiet. I'm hoping that while I talk, it's going to catch some of the sounds of this, though. Yeah, eating a banana. Oh, I got it on my mic. You're terrible. I think I'm going to start an ASMR channel.
Just to annoy me.
Not be a subscriber. You're going to go in and thumbs down every single video I make.
This kind of explains why I've never gotten into ASMR.
Oh, I haven't had a banana in a while. That was a little bit brown. Not that good.
I'm allergic to them, so I haven't had them in a long time. Oh, while you're getting on to this last one.
No, we're almost done. We're almost done. All I'm trying to do is just kind of stimulate, but if you want, we can take a detour for a second. I have a couple more.
I've
A detour.
got to take a minute.
Go ahead.
This
You guys
this
gotta
is
see.
very negative stimulating for me.
I'm gonna try to probably do dual cameras this time so that you can see the entire time I've been doing this, Joe's face and his reaction. He physically does not want to be in this room right now.
So, the 2023 study that I referenced before, they did find. So I just want to go through what areas of the brain were activated during the fMRI.
Okay.
And so these are going to be very scientific terms. So bear with me.
Okay. $25 words right here.
Oh, these are more than $25 words. Audiovisual stimulation showed activation of the middle frontal gyrus and the nucleus accumbens. Okay, so that's the audio visual, so it's audio and visual. So the middle frontal gyrus, that is, plays a key role in the development of literacy and numeracy. So that is the language, so literacy, language, reading, and ability to use numbers. So that's kind of, I guess the easiest way to say that is the logical centers of the brain. So letters and numbers and all that, as well as, and then the nucleus accumbens is one part of the reward system. It plays an important role in processing rewarding stimuli, reinforcing stimuli. So reinforcing is food and water. So rewarding is obviously the reward. Reinforcing, and those which are both rewarding and reinforcing. So here are some examples of rewarding and reinforcing: addictive drugs, sex, and exercise. And so when you are watching and listening to ASMR, those are the areas of the brain that are being stimulated.
So
being
the same
activated.
thing is like what they talk about, you know, even like the dopamine
Right.
is what it is.
And so, and then the auditory stimulation showed activation in the insular cortex. So the insular cortex is important for sensoromotor processing. So that's the motor, the physical action, and related to the sensory input. So sensoromotor processing, risk reward behavior, autonomics, pain pathways, and auditory and vestibular functioning. And so all of that to say is that when you just hear it, it isn't the same. It's not hitting the same areas as far as like the reward reinforcing or the reward and reinforcing, but it is in the same area as risk reward behavior, as the pain pathways. And so it's really, it shows that there is some kind of addictive behavior, not necessarily negative, but there is some addictive behavior coming from any of the ASMR. There's a
That would
reward.
explain the need to pursue more of that.
Exactly. So now again, this study, they did not do a comparison, so they didn't have a control that was watching, like say, kittens playing. That would be a relaxing to see if it's a similar response to those, or if these are specific to ASMR. Because we know kitten videos are addictive. The entire internet is full of cat videos. And so
I hate them. I think they're dumb.
yeah, well, you've seen my response to ASMR, so it could be individual responses
It really
to
is.
those. And that's why it's important. And they only had 30 participants. You know, if they had 1,000 participants to do this and have a control group, that would show us a lot more, which hopefully they will be doing more studies on this. If it's just videos themselves, that are producing these responses. And so ASMR is no different than cuddly cat videos. Or if there is a difference. Now, if there isn't a difference, it doesn't mean ASMR is any less a valuable tool. It's just another tool in the arsenal to calm down for people who don't like cat videos. It's a way to calm down. For people who don't like ASMR or have the responses I have, cat videos may work just fine. If there are different responses, then that can allow us to look into what is it about the ASMR that is producing this response. It gives us more areas, more avenues to study. So right now, there is evidence that there is this reward behavior coming from ASMR. Whether it's ASMR specific or just calming videos, not sure yet.
Well, now they've already seen the link between it being an anxiety relief. So it's, because of that, how can they help motivate like a new modality in practice so that this can be a normal therapy?
Right. So an example of this, so isolating it down to the components that really help. So willow bark for many generations was a medicine used to help pain.
Yeah.
They didn't know why. They just know willow bark helped. Well, after study by scientists, they found that willow bark contains what we now call aspirin.
Right.
And so instead of having to grow willows everywhere and using willow bark, now we've isolated aspirin and it is a medication that we can use.
Yeah.
Same thing with ASMR. If we can isolate what it is about ASMR that's producing these kinds of responses, we can distill that into a concentrated form to hopefully allow more concentrated relief for things like anxiety, for other issues to just calm down. And then that would allow us a stronger tool in the mental health crisis and to help people with mental health.
Yeah. So I think, we're in agreement on there's a future application to this. I think we don't want to discount the other senses when we're talking about this, but I think that the specific parts of these that are isolating compared to the other senses when we're talking about taste, touch, smell, is the other ones are physical, where when you're talking about just visual or just auditory, it is, if you're triggering a physiological response from two senses, that, on one sense doesn't require, it requires a video, it requires a camera, it requires a microphone, but all the other ones require a contact. And what I think the effort in what this was is to simulate that I can get you to physiologically respond simply by doing things in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. I mean, it's wild stuff. So I'm going to finish this off here.
Yep.
So crinkling is another one. So I'm not going to crinkle this up. I'm just going to kind of touch it near the mic.
You can crinkle it if you want. I do get the tingle. It's just not a pleasant response for me.
So there's lots of different things. But I think probably the biggest, proponent of these things, this one shouldn't be difficult. This is just turning pages of a book. It's just, I'm reading a book. I'm talking to you. That's it. It made me think of when someone in my life was reading me a bedtime story, or, you think about, moving open a newspaper and, getting it open and you're looking at it and you take that paper and you kind of like, it just, everything about the paper makes noise. And so it's there. And I don't necessarily know how that would be soothing especially if it's constant. It's like tapping. I can't stand freaking tapping. Some things are humming, from humming like to to different sounds that your mouth makes, like S's, P's, and K's. Why? Because they're breathy. They sound breathier than other things. But then you also have things like a motor running. No. I can hear a motor running a mile away from my house, and I have hearing loss. And I can hear that. I can feel it, and it pisses me off. So it's to each their own. These are very distinct to the individual. Some things won't work, other things will be magic. Where none of these things that I brought as props might be they're not helpful for you. But, I don't know. I liked brushing my beard. That was nice and soothing for myself.
Let us know in the comments what, if any of these, worked for you. Because we know none of them worked for me. This entire thing was just extremely negative for me.
Joe got really excited when I talked to him about the idea, but now that we're in it, he's like, this sucks.
Horrible.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, we're going to do a reset, but we're going to back away from the mics and finish the episode at volume.
Okay, so anyone who is listening to this for ASMR, we're going to end the ASMR right now. So stop listening. Otherwise, this is going to be very jarring for you.
I really think that, having a conversation via ASMR is interesting.
It's different.
It really challenges it intensifies everything. Like, even for me, like hearing, I could hear, things outside, things around, like just normal creaks, and I could hear my muscles, my sore muscles being sore, like whatever. Like it was just kind of this strange, mostly uncomfortable environment, So I don't know how I feel about it. But that being said, I'm trying to let's do a reset here. Let's get back into who we are, what we do, and have a conversation about this.
I think in one aspect, if you want to know what it's like to be autistic in a large crowd, take an ASMR video or sound that you don't like. If there are any that negatively trigger you, take that and magnify it by 1,000. And or play like 20 of those videos. Like if you've got different ones, 20 different negative triggers, play them all at the same time. That's what it's like to be autistic. That's what it's like in the world around an autistic person. Mm-hmm. That's why here in our office, we don't have a lot of people here. I keep myself in my room where there's not a lot going on, because that's what it's like for me when I go out in crowds. It's very, very just always on you. Now, I've developed ways to be able to bear through it, but I think that's probably the biggest. It was really interesting learning about ASMR and seeing the science and explaining that, but really I think it was interesting to see how much it relates to autism. And really, if you want to feel what it's like for someone who's autistic, do that.
Well, I think also to recognize that it's not for everybody. Like, there are people that this doesn't do anything. Like it really has no impact whatsoever. And you're like, I don't know, you're kind of a weird person then, because this is wrecking people, and people go nuts over this stuff. It's wild. There's so much about this. But anyway, you know what? If you're in the market for just trying to figure out what you want to do for that special someone, and maybe the ASMR tapes are not their jam, they just don't really like it, and they're not really interested in listening to somebody chew.
I don't know who would.
Like I said, the video I watched, man, the most annoying part about the video wasn't the fact of anything they were doing ASMR. It was them breathing. Like that was the most annoying thing. And I don't know if they were doing it on purpose, but I know I can video edit that out. If you're looking for that gift for somebody and you just don't know what to get them, you're like, man, this one has to knock it out of the park. I'm going to ask you to tell a little white lie. Tell that someone that you've already gotten them the gift. And then you're going to challenge them to guess. That way, you know exactly what they want.
Okay, anyone who has ever watched a sitcom in their life knows that this will inevitably backfire.
But think of the comedy behind if you get busted and they don't really like the gift and you're like, meh, it's just that the whole gift is meh, all right? Then all of a sudden, you know, or what is it? The gift is an L. I learned that one the other day.
Oh, there you go.
Honestly, like them just confessing the story at that point and being like, well, you told me. Like just having that kind of like lighthearted spirit about it, but really going like, I have no idea what to get this person. So tell them and then have them reveal to you what they're secretly wanting by guessing what they, you know, what they're like. It's not going to be like, oh, is it $1 million? You're like, no, you know, is it a new car? You know, like, no, only commercials do that. No humans, you know, like,
I don't know. This is another one of your dubious life hacks.
that's the goal. That's the goal, is just to try to, I mean, the idea behind hacking is you're cutting the corner on normal operations. And this one I think cuts the corner pretty well. I mean, honestly, if you're around somebody enough to where you can get that information in a, you know, in a more spy sort of way, then you're good.
I think you got to be pretty good at that, though. Yeah. I mean, because I just imagine that would be so hard. They tell you something and you're like, oh, that's a good idea. Okay, I'll get that. And then it takes you 2 weeks to get it from Amazon.
Oh, start early. You know, like,
Oh, okay.
whatever. Like if it's like, man, I already got your gift for you. You know, oh, I know your birthday's coming up. It's still a bit away, but I've already got your gift. You want to guess what it is? There you go. Now I know. You know, like I've set it up. Now, yeah, obviously it takes a little mental planning there, but I think we're good.
You've got to make sure to hide the receipt.
Hey guys, we've reached the end of our show. I want to recommend like, subscribe, leave a comment or two. We'd like to hear from you, our listener. If this stuff is valuable and helpful to you, that helps us get in front of other viewers, other listeners, other watchers. Life's too short, so keep laughing and learning, and remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.